Hello, thank you for joining us for Rhyme and Reason. I am your host, and today we hope to inspire, encourage, and provoke thought as we come forth on today. The guest that I have with me today, Charles Kenneth Hawthorne. He is a native of West Virginia. He attended Bluefield State University and focused on business management with a minor in elementary education. He possesses an array of gifts and talents. Mr. Hawthorne, it's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
I am in such anticipation of how our conversation is going to go. And this is my very first time actually meeting you. So, our topic for today is transformation. And transformation, of course, involves a deep change, an enduring alteration. It impacts us to the core. And ultimately, it has to do with a journey of growth and it has to do with renewal. When you think about transformation for yourself, what is it?
Transformation on a personal level for myself is that I grew up in a spiritual family with a spiritual mother. Uh, and we went to church every Sunday, Wednesday, and every time the church doors were open, we were there. But when I got grown and grew up and went to college, I was introduced to marijuana. And that was the gateway of drug to me. And ever since I smoked that at 18, my life just changed dramatically. I went from being a student at the college to being a dropout. I worked and I worked to get high. And after I worked to get high, and that led me to many different roads. And like I said, the marijuana was a gateway to another drug. And I got addicted to crack cocaine and spent like 30 years in that scene. And I have, and during that scene takes you. I always describe that scene as like a drug, and any drug you take, it has side effects. To drugs, it has side effects, and it comes with a lot of baggage because I would work, but I also would steal. I also would lie, and it caused me to have sexual partners, and I slept with men. I slept with women in order to get the drug, in order to just fulfill the lust of the flesh. And that drug just it just changed my life dramatically. I ended up at the age of 50 with 96 felonies on my record, over 50 some misdemeanors. And found myself in jail in Tazewell County Jail. And at that moment, I told the Lord, I said, Lord, I'm just going to spend the rest of my life getting high and doing what I want to do because I can't change myself. I can't change this. So I'll just go with the flow. But the moment I said that, God stepped in. He was just waiting for me to say that I couldn't do it. And because we can't do it on our own, we need the Lord. And He stepped into my life and He changed my life from that day forward. And I have never been the same again.
All of that had to be hard, but what comes to me, of course, is when we go to school and stuff and we grow up and we go to church and all that thing, then we're not exposed to a lot of things. So then when we hit a certain age, then we expose to stuff because now we feel like we are missing out on something, or maybe it's something we should try or have an opportunity to try. It's an opportunity. I'm free. I'm grown. I can go and do this, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and that would be the description, but I think that really is the description for all of us, whether it's the drugs or whatever. I just think that is the level of saying that I'm independent. I'm tired of people telling me what to do, what I can and cannot do. So now I'm gonna do
Yes.
what I want to do, and it
Right.
can take us down various roads, whether it's pregnancy, whether it's drugs, whether it's homosexuality, whether it's adultery. I mean, it can carry us so many places. So would you say that once you told the Lord, and that was He was waiting on you, would you
Yes.
say that prior to that, as you in retrospect, is there something you would have changed with that?
Um, Me, yes, it's something I would have changed. But yeah, it's amazing that you asked that question because uh, the moment I got out of jail and the Lord had called me to preach, and I told the Lord, I said, Lord, I am so sorry that it took me so long to come to you and to realize that you were the one I needed after all. And just like I'm sitting here talking to you, he talked to me. He said, it didn't take you long. He said, I intended for you to go through every minute, every hour,
Yeah,
every day, every week that you went through so
yeah.
you could take somebody else out. And he told me, he said, I'm going to use you as an example as to what I can do in anyone's life.
And that's awesome. To me, you have such an awesome testimony.
Yes.
A lot of times people have testimonies and they don't give their testimonies because of
Right.
pride or shame and that kind of thing.
Yes.
I can look at even at my life and look at things and say, would I would like this changed or that changed, or would I have done something different? I could say I could possibly have done something different or wanted to, but I
Yes.
would agree that it would have changed who I am if it hadn't been for the experiences of life, the betrayals, the disobedience,
Yes.
um, the failure to heed, the failure to hear, because I can hear,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know, I can definitely hear. It's whether or not I'm willing to listen and obey. And
Mm-hmm.
partial obedience is disobedience all day long. So God has a particular road and a plan for each one of our lives. And we
Right.
have to walk through that road. Sometimes we think we off track, or we think we late doing it and all that kind of stuff, or we too old to do this now, or why would you have
Yes.
me do this right now?
Yes.
Because he's God. He's
Yes.
all knowing, all seeing, he's all wise, he knows, he knows
Yes.
we have in the back of our mind that we don't even release from our mouth.
Right.
But some of them are not right. They're just not right. Mm.
One thing I want to add to that is that if it had not been for my foundation, I don't think I would have made it through. But I had the foundation from birth all the way up to 17 or 18. I had that sure foundation. My life was built on a sure foundation. And even though I went off track, always in the back of my mind, I knew I was doing wrong, but I always knew that there was a God and that there was somebody looking out for me the whole time, even though I wasn't doing what I think would be the right thing.
And sometimes,
Yes.
you can play that game with yourself. You know, I'm gonna do this. Nah, or you put yourself in harm's way and know you are putting yourself in harm's way, but you're justifying the behavior of whatever it is, then you can blame the other person or the other thing because you wouldn't have been there, right? And
Yes.
the word, of course, keep telling us he gives us a way of escape. Of course he does.
Right.
He gives us a way of escape. But guess what? We wouldn't have to escape if we never went there.
Yes. Very true. I knew we was gonna go there anyway, so that's why he provided that way of escape, and I thank God for it.
I do too.
Yes.
I thank God for the experiences. I think even the lessons that are painful. And
Oh yes.
there's some extremely painful lessons, whether they are lessons that you learn about yourself or myself, or they're lessons about betrayal, or trusting
Yes. There you
and,
go.
and somebody when you should trust God more, and
Right.
then allow him to discern and allow you to see that your eyes, that you'll be able to see what is and not be moved by your emotions.
Hmm.
They're all being transformed daily. We get to choose, though. You know what I'm saying? We get to
Oh,
choose.
very well.
He has to stop us somewhere. Our relationship is personal.
It is. Yes.
It's a one-on-one. And you said in general, all the things that you have gone through in
Yes.
general. Do you want to expound on some of it, on what it looked like? Different people have tried different things. So, I am familiar with
Yes.
marijuana. I tried it once, right?
Yes.
But I couldn't stay with it because it impacted me in a way that I knew was going to be a problem for me.
Right. Right.
So, it only took me one time on that. But
Yes.
I had them lessons that took me more than one.
That was like me. It was the marijuana. It was pretty much a drug that caused me to. Uh, I was creative when I smoked marijuana. I could create things, and so that led me to think that it was okay to smoke it. It was just it helped me do. For instance, it helped me if I smoked a joint or whatever. I could paint a house all in. I could paint a room in one day and decorate it and put everything back. And when you come in, you think I'd been there for weeks, but I'd only been there for a day or so. And so I thought that was okay. But like I said, but the moment I experienced the crack cocaine, it was a different kind of high. It was a high that I had. Marijuana I could do without a few days or so. Crack cocaine I couldn't do without. I wanted it every day, and I did anything could possibly do to get it. And for instance, uh, I wrote up a bunch of checks. I stole some checks from my mom, wrote these checks up, and when I finally went to court behind these checks, it was 40 some checks, but each check had two different charges. And I was facing 83 to 830 years the first time I went to court. And that's what it causes you to do. And the judge told me he had looked on my pre-sentence report, and he said, "You're really not a bad guy." And he said, if you take that intelligence you have and use it for something constructive, he said there'd be no limit as to what you could do. But I still wasn't ready to do that. I still I was in and out of jail, and for instance, and the drug itself, it made me so paranoid that I would be in the shower smoking it and swear there would be helicopters flying around the house and things like that. And for instance, one time I was smoking, and it made my ears so perk up I could hear things from miles away. And I was in the doorway, and I got so paranoid that I was in the peephole of the doorway, and I stood there for 2 hours in the peephole. And when I got back out of the peephole, my eye was so dry that I couldn't even close it. And I had to put water in my eye to close it. And a lot of things that I had been through, now they seem funny, but they were not funny when I went through them. And I had another instance is I had these guys to break into my apartment, take me out of the apartment, and they were going to kill me because I didn't buy my drugs from their group. So they took me on the west side of town and was holding me in the alley, and they kept saying, "Where is he? Where is he? Where is he?" I didn't know what they were talking about. And then finally they just got upset and they took me back home, and they told me, said, "We were going to kill you, but the gunman didn't show up." And so they took me back home and just put me back in my apartment. Those are the kind of things I have been through with this. And I've been shot at and bullets missed me. It's just been so much that I've been through with that drug. But and I can now looking back, reflecting back on it, it was God just taking care of me. It was God. He had a mission for me. He had a ministry for me. And in order for me to be able to help someone, I had to go through that myself. And even though I went to church periodically during this time, but the pastors I had, once they found out I was a drug addict or living a homosexual life, they backed away from me. They treated me with a different type of love than they treated the rest of the congregation with. And I asked the Lord, I was like, "Lord," I said, I just don't even want to go to church anymore. He said, "That's because I'm calling you to be a pastor. And I wanted you to go through all these things, the hurt, the betrayal, the misuse, the misunderstandings, because when I send people to you, you will know how not to treat them."
Amen. That says so much. That
Yes.
we would have such a loving God, such a loving
Yes.
Father who keeps his hands upon our lives, even in the midst of chaos and havoc and stuff. I always say I have to have accountability people in my life because if I don't have accountability in my life, I will have havoc in my life.
Right.
And it doesn't hurt to have accountability people in any of our lives.
Yeah, we all need that. Yes.
But since God loves us, He sees us for who we are. He knows where we are going. Or better yet, people see where we are. He sees who we are.
Yes.
You were incarcerated a lot of times, right?
Oh, yes. Yes.
But the deal is, you were physically incarcerated, but you were also incarcerated within your mind.
Yes.
And, and
Yes.
that's what held you hostage was the drug, you know,
Yes.
and its impact. What kind of day was it? You know, the day or the night that you were in jail. What did the jail look like?
Thank God I was in jail here um in Tazewell, Virginia, and even though a jail is not a good place to be, it was one of the better jails. We didn't have a lot. We don't have the Bloods, the Crips. We don't have a lot of gangs around here, so it was not very dangerous to be in there. It's just very inconvenient. But as a matter of fact, you said that, and it brought back something God had told me when I was in jail. He said, "I did not lock you up from the world." He said, "I locked the world up from you, so you
Wow.
would have a chance to get your mind straight and he said, and you know something? While you're in here, I'm teaching you endurance." And he
Mm.
said, "I'm not gonna let you out until I think you've got it."
How long
Yes.
were you incarcerated?
I that at that particular time, I was there 10 months, and my sister came to get me out. She was gonna pay the bond, and they said, "Well, you're gonna pay the bond, and we might even let him out." So, but in a day or two, we're gonna come back and get him and charge him with something else. So you just might as well not waste your money and leave him in here. So God was in the whole process of the thing. He did not want me out. And every day or every other day, I would go up to the door to my pod. I was in a pod with about 39 other guys, and I would go up to that door and I would just knock on the door, and they thought I was crazy. But while I was there, I was reading the Bible, and the Lord said, "If you knock, it shall be open unto you, and if you're seeking, you shall find, and asking, it shall be given unto you." And so I knocked and I knocked, and so, but one day I didn't have to knock. Thank God that they opened the door. And then something, when they opened that door, I was like, "Oh God, thank God, they opened the door, I'm free." And you know how you think you've learned the lesson already, but God said, "No, you still ain't fully learned this lesson." So they opened that door and said, "Come on, you're getting out of here." So when they took me to the intake the session, there was two more cops from Mercer County. I was in Tazewell County. I was in Virginia. There's two cops waiting for me from West Virginia. They took me to another jail. So
Oh
I was
my.
locked. I was locked up all over again.
Wow.
But I went back to court. And to make a long story short, when I went to court in front of Judge Swope, and I sit there in the courtroom, and he looked at me. He said, "Mr. Hawthorne," he said, you have 93 felonies before you made it to my courtroom. You have 3 more. You have 96 felonies on your record and over 50 some misdemeanors." He said, "So you're going to jail." He said, "I'm going to lock you up because you haven't learned your lesson." And he said, "Sit down there, Mr. Hawthorne." And so they did some more court procedures. And he said, "Stand up, Mr. Hawthorne. Tell me why I shouldn't send you to jail." And I said, "Well, Judge, this is what the Lord told me to tell you." He said, "It's never too late in anyone's life for him to change your life." He said, "I agree with that. I go to church. I believe in the Lord, but you still going to jail." And so he said, "Sit on down there." So I sit down there for a while. They did some more court procedures. And he said, "Stand up, Mr. Hawthorne." And I said, "Yes, sir." And he stood up. He said, "You know something? It must be the Spirit of the Lord in this courtroom, because I'm going to let you go home." He said, "Y'all take the shackles off, give him his clothes, and let him go home." And he told me, he said, "If you disappoint me, I'm putting you back in jail. But if you disappoint God, I feel sorry for you. There's nothing I can do for you." And I have been I have been going ever since, and it hasn't been an easy road. And I've been tried on all ends, but I stayed the course, and I thank God that I did. And if we just stay the course, it just sometimes things are get so bad we don't think we can make it, but we can always make it if we just stay the course. Because it takes the bad times to make you appreciate the good times,
That's true.
and so you can't have one without the other. And like I said, I just thank God for how that played out for me.
It is just awesome. But and it's also for such a time as this. God knows what we can endure. Everybody could not endure what
Yes,
you had to endure. And also, He knew that what your family would look like. A lot of times people say, well, I didn't grow up in this kind of household. I didn't get this or I didn't get that. And that truly
right,
that really isn't you. That you got what you needed. It was just your choices of life. But it's also at the same time, not just your choices of life, it's the things that God would have. So nothing could have happened to which God did not allow.
right,
From the smoking of the first marijuana to the cocaine, to any and all of the incidents and pieces of your life.
right.
Which thing did you do first? Did you end up being a pastor or did you end up being an entrepreneur?
um, I was called to pastor. I was called into the ministry 9 years before I answered the call, and I was still doing drugs, doing the calling, and I answered the call when I went to Tazewell County Jail. But when I got out of there, I had 96 felonies on my record. Like I said before, I couldn't get a job, and
Right.
so that's what led me to being a business owner, entrepreneur. And so I got out of jail, and I borrowed a lawnmower, I borrowed a weed eater, and I borrowed a gas can, and I walked up and down the street cutting people's grass. And that led to the entrepreneurship of me owning my own business called Shouting John Enterprises. And Shouting John is a story in itself. I'll get back to that later. But anyway, and then doing that, I walked up and down the street just cutting people's grass. And I did that for months. And this one lady said, I'm tired of you walking by my house with that lawnmower and that gas can and that weed eater. She said, from now on, you just take my car and go cut your grass. And so she allowed me to use her car. And then, like I said, I'm making a long story short. And then after a while, just taking the car, she just gave me the car. And then
Wow.
after she gave me the car, then that led to a truck. I was able to buy a truck. And then I was paying for this truck, and then somebody came along. They paid that truck off for me, and so then I was able to get another truck. It was in just God, and I started off with 7 customers, and today, I say I have about 100 customers that we cut and that I mow their lawns for them, and I don't even have to go out and cut anymore. I just run it from the office, and I hire a crew to go out and cut for me. So that's Shouting John Enterprises.
If you just make one step,
Yes.
just step one time in faith. The interesting thing now, I did work on the board of city council
Right.
with all these felonies, nothing but God. That's the story.
Amen.
How did you end up there? How?
I didn't even run for office, and I was I was sitting here at my house, and the mayor and another member came and said, listen, we had somebody to resign from the office, and we would want to know if you'd be interested in coming and being on the board with us. And I was like, yes, I'd be interested. They had three candidates all together. And needless to say, I'm the candidate that they all voted to have on the board. And that's what I say all the time. I say, I know this is nothing but God.
What would be some key practices or principles that you found that were able to help you from this journey?
Key principles. The first key principle is that you have to be totally honest with yourself. And we know ourselves better than anybody. And we know our shortcomings. We know our downfalls. We know our likes, our dislikes, and we know what triggers we have for certain situations. And so when I first got out of jail, I took a sheet of paper and I wrote down the things that I wanted God to change in me. And I wrote those down and I added Bible verses to them. And so I had the word backing up what I want God to do for me. And he did some of them right away, but some of them it just took time. And for instance, I was smoking cigarettes. That was one thing I couldn't let go, and I smoked for 10 years. And while I was even preaching, I just told another minister about it a few hours ago that I said I would get out the pulpit preaching, and I would just fly to the car and have my cigarettes up under the seat. And I said I would light me a cigarette and look in the rearview mirror, see if any saints was following me, and be smoking. I said, but once God said that's enough, that was one of the lists I think I had on the list. I said, thank God. I said, thank God every day for 10 years for quitting smoking, but it didn't happen. It happened 10 years later, but it did happen. And so, and then that did happen. And then there's other things that I thank God for on it. And like I said, all of them didn't come about right away. One of them says, I thank God for my church. And I've been reading this list for 14 years, and I just got my church 3 weeks ago. And so, so you have to be diligent. And because you don't see anything change doesn't mean that God is not operating in your life. And I read my Bible, I pray, and I talk to God like I talk to you sometimes, and because He knows me, and just He's in constant contact with the Lord. And keep in a Bible believing church. Just go every time. The people gonna make you mad, but go anyway. Just keep going forward. Don't let nothing turn you around. Those are some of the key principles I can share with you. And if you have family, and you like you said, you have to have somebody that holds you accountable. Find somebody that's trustworthy that's gonna hold you accountable to your shortcomings. And you need somebody in your life that's a true believer and that want to see the best for you and that will pray for the best for you. And the key principle of mine is just to keep on moving forward, no matter what happens. You might not think that you're making progress, but one day you'll look behind you and you will be making progress. And the last thing I'm going to say on that, no matter what you're doing, go to church. Go to church.
And I want to piggyback on that. When I think about it, always has to do with continue to pursue God, continue to grow, continue to get stronger in your walk. And even if you like, everybody that is listening may or may not believe in the God that we serve, but you still need to keep moving. You still keep going. You need to always have hope. Tomorrow is not promised to any of us. So even though tomorrow is not promised to us, it is God who allows us to see tomorrow. And when we get the opportunity to see tomorrow, we should exercise our faith and our love toward human beings, because the one thing we know is God is love, no matter what. So if you're a person and you are not showing love, where is God in your life? And that's what I would say. And so, to all the listeners of Rhyme and Reason, we thank you for joining us for this podcast. We look forward to getting some feedback and comments from you. We hope that at this particular point that it was able to inspire, encourage you, and provoke thought. If you have questions or anything like that, or any comments, feel free to leave them. I will put some information in regard to Mr. Hawthorne. So again, thank you, and we look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Thank you, Mr. Hawthorne.
You're welcome.